So you talking about malware development. So how much malware development does a red teamer have to know? Can you get by not knowing how to develop malware?
I would say you can get by, but you're going to have a really uphill battle with it. Occasionally, a new loader will come up on GitHub, but usually within a couple days, EDRs are starting to signature it. So having your own tooling off the shelf that you can use just to pull out of your back pocket to get command and control is critical in today's red team world. I started off getting all my malware development skills with the OSEP from OffSec, and I just fell in love with the malware sections of that course. It was just so fun trying to get around Windows Defender and just get different certain techniques to load and just getting that like interpreter checked in or whatever it says like this. I get it in Cobalt Strike mixed up with a checked in, but they're so interchangeable anymore to me. But just like get that little to see it check in, defenders on, everything's on, but just like addicting to me. So I just got super into it and just learning new techniques. And once you have that base, you kind of know where to go from there. A lot of like the EDR evading payloads and like the ones that like taught in like OSEP are not that different. There's just a few little tweaks to it. Just for an example, right? So like OSEP teaches a little bit about it, and it's using like pretty traditional like Windows API calls. Where there's like just to get around EDR, it's just if you just change to like like indirect sys calls and just use the same calls, just skip a few steps and just do everything straight from NTD DLL.DLL and do sys calls from there, and just not calling it directly from kernel where it's like signatured in an EDR, for example. Then you're through. Like the principle is the same. It's just how you actually go about it's just mildly different. It's a good test of just being able to think on your feet as well when you're writing malware, because you're just trying to do something. You're doing the same action. You're just having to do it differently and get creative with it. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's just the cat and mouse game of malware development, and just between the blue and red team as is. And that's okay if they catch it. I mean, nothing's bulletproof, and the EDRs are getting better every day, and they should. That they're keeping us safe at the end of the day. Yeah, I just recently got into a Maldev Academy subscription. I saw it on Twitter. It's a few big name guys who run that. That's been amazing for malware development. So yeah, for any of the listeners, like Maldev Academy subscriptions are fantastic. I would absolutely recommend them if you're looking to go that route with it or start experimenting around with it. And even for the blue team, just to be able to write some malware and just look at it with your EDR and just kind of start signaturing techniques. That's a godsend to your organization overall, just to have more eyes on with processes and what they're doing.
So the main takeaway I got from that was because, like I said, I was going through the OSEP course, and I was, like you say, you would learn how to bypass Windows Defender and some of the off-the-shelf antivirus products out there, and you'll bypass them, and that is addicting. You're like, oh my gosh, like
Yep.
this bypassed Windows Defender, and this bypassed like the AV that I was running on my host machine. I was like, this beat my AV. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is dangerous.
Yep.
And I would guess I was under the impression that like that course was, it's not going to be EDR, like the payloads that they, like the techniques they teach you. But you're saying those techniques, if you take those and tweak them, then you can bypass some of the EDR, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the malware is basically open a chunk of memory, stick some instructions in it, and execute it. And that's kind of an oversimplification, but that's what you're doing at the end of the day. You just got to get creative on how you open the chunk of memory, how you copy instructions to it, and how you execute them. So just doing stuff like sys calls or trying to obstruct the memory page, or whether it's a local process or a remote process, you can just play with different techniques of that, and it's just going to run eventually. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me when I was a SOC analyst going through OSEP. At the time, because it was like, oh, our EDR will catch it. Our EDR catches everything. Oh, our EDR does not catch everything. Oh no. Oh, we got to tune this. Oh no. That was such like an eye-opening. I think that was really like when I went from like junior to senior. Like it was that moment of realization of like, oh, this is not bulletproof, and just having that real like eye-opening experience of like, oh, we have to tune this. Oh, we got to really proactively keep an eye on this.
I want you to talk about uploading your malware to like VirusTotal and some of those
Never
solutions.
do that. Yeah, never do that. You're tattling on yourself. Never do that. They're going to be on there eventually. Like if you're running a payload against EDR, it's just going to cloud upload. That's just name of the game with it. I mean, it happens, but yeah, don't tattle on yourself at that point. I think the original course, I think, taught using like anti-scan, but that's behind a paywall now, which is a shame, because I used to use anti-scan a lot. But yeah, nowadays you're just better off just testing live. Just have a box that just doesn't have internet access to detonate your payload, and just have it just straight to you. Don't have any redirectors, or don't jump through things. Just straight just team server, or like interpreter server, and box on the same network, just have it go straight to you. Make sure cloud uploads disabled. Make sure it doesn't have internet access, so it can't telemetry doesn't get through to the actual EDR provider. And then that's effectively how we're testing from there. And just update it every now and again, the signatures. Period. Just give it internet access, or just revert, give it internet access. Do it from a snapshot, give it internet access. Update the EDR, turn the internet back off. The cloud solutions or the website scanning solutions are just not worth running at this point.
When it comes to malware development, programming and coding is a skill that you have to have. What languages should someone really understand to create malware that's going to bypass EDR and stuff?
I'm a bit biased just because I do a lot of NIM work, but I think NIM's have been a great malware language so far. It writes like Python, compiles like C, and it compiles like ugly. It's really hard to really get a good analysis on NIM payloads. Assembly is pretty handy to know as well, because a lot of the malware techniques used, especially when you start getting really messy with jump calls and doing things like Heaven's Gate, for example, you need some assembly knowledge to know what's going on with that. Plus, it's just good to be able to just look at some of the assembly anyway, oh, this is what this is doing anyway. I started out with C# and Python with my programming. They're both pretty simple. They have a pretty good learning curve from there, and then moving on to some more niche ones like NIM, Go, and some assembly are just generally useful. Those are what I generally recommend, because the goal of malware is you want it to be not picked up by signature checks, a defender just signaturing you right out the gate. It needs to be portable, so if the client's not running Java on their computer, you wouldn't want to write Java malware and drop it, because it's not going to run. The same with Python. And it has to be somewhat easy to write. You don't want to sit there and struggle with syntax while writing the malware instead of actually detonating it. So you need portability, ease of writing, and somewhat level of obfuscation when it's dropped. So if they compile kind of ugly, then that's generally pretty desirable as well. So NIM and Go are great examples of those too.